All good? How are you?
Good, mate. Good.
Hey, we're rolling. Hey, Brookster. How are you?
Good. Oh, sorry. You only can hear me.
Oh, you're only on the headphones, not on the headphones. What's going on, man?
Good, man. Not much. How you been?
Pretty good. I've probably not gone as hard on Easter long weekend as I have in the past, but we're still reasonably hard. How about you? Are you guys allowed out of the house yet, or is it still pretty much in lockdown?
No, mate, we're pretty much back to normal, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as we got here, it was as long as you're wearing a mask, pretty much. I don't know. He is recording, but I don't think he's starting it. We're just chatting.
Yeah. No, the whole thing's just a chat. So
yeah, sweet.
Yeah, we'll just talk. So life in Seattle is pretty much wear a mask and there's no other restrictions, or is there any other things that they put on you guys?
Basically, yeah, wear a mask whenever you're outside. You know, in the grocery stores, all that kind of stuff. I think every business is now allowed to have 50%, you know, total in their restaurants, bars, etc. You still have to book, but mate, there's no contact tracing like Australia. You know, at home we have to scan a QR code to get in or whatever like that. You know, at least they know which, you know, who's been where. There's nothing like that, mate. So you can kind of understand why it kind of snowballs over here.
Yeah.
You know, say we went out for dinner and there was a few hundred people went through that restaurant that day. No one would know who was there and what time they were there. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's a bit strange, but
is there a reason they do that, or is that just because it's America?
I just think it's poorly handled. Yeah, come say hello. Yeah, Sausage just woke up.
Is it Ivy met?
Say hello.
She's getting so big.
I know. She's a big unit.
Hello. Well, she
say
can't
hey,
hear
Chubby.
me.
Say hello, Chubby.
Oh, she just woke up. Okay, we'll get out of here.
She's getting so big down there. How's it all going? Is she moving around and talking and stuff yet, or is that still a few months away?
She's not talking. She's but making a lot of noises, you know, like and like high pitched squealing and all of that kind of stuff. She's rolling from what does she do? She rolls to her tummy, but then she can't roll back to her back. So she gets frustrated and then she'll just start sort of yelling out for help, especially when she goes to bed. So she sleeps fully in her own room now. And we've got like a baby monitor, which is good because when we were back home, she was co-sleeping with us in the room. And every little wriggle, every little noise, every little snore or snort, you wake up. You know, it's impossible to get good sleep, basically, with a newborn. But now she's sweet. We've sleep trained her. And how you sleep train them is basically put them in a room and let them scream until they fall asleep, and it's pretty rough. But
so you can't go and grab them or anything. You just have
the way it works is start with 10 minutes, right? You know, get to the 10-minute point and go and reassure them that, you know, mum and dad are still here. You know, so go and rub their tummy and you might pick them up and give her a little hug if she's really freaking out. And then you go back again and then you let them go and say next time it's 12 minutes. You know what I mean? Until eventually she'll fall asleep. And after only 3 days, Ivy was falling asleep within 4 minutes or something like that, you know? So
how good's that?
Yeah, and sleeping from like 7 p.m. all the way through till 7 a.m. sometimes, like 12-hour sleeps, you know? And
how old is she now?
5 months old. But before we'd sleep trained her, she was waking up every 3 hours, you know.
So it's just getting them used to that routine that people are still there. Because I guess it's all new to them, isn't it?
Yeah, basically once they know that they can fall back asleep on their own without mum and dad coming to cradle them, that's why they call it sleep training. They know that, hang on a second, I can actually fall back asleep on my own.
Yeah.
And then once they figure that out, it's a lot easier for the parents, put it that way.
Have they given you guys immunisations yet, or is that not widely available?
It is, mate. So they're rolling the vaccines out in stages. I think already 100 million US, 100 million Americans, have already been vaccinated. and
Yep.
they're going out in stages. So first it was the high risk. So frontline health workers, teachers, people over 65, people with diseases or at a higher risk. And then now it's at say stage 3 of the stage 4 rollout. So at the moment it's basically if you're obese or something. So you and me would be sweet to get one at the moment. Things like that, mate. So I think we're one stage away from being a full rollout to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. So Brooke and I have we've put our name on a wait list, and as soon as they're available for our sort of branch of people, then we're ready to roll. But there's still a lot of back and forth over here on whether or not people are going to get it. You know what I mean? They're just it's strange. I mean, people are dying at a high rate. Still. And to you and me, it would make sense to, as soon as it's available, just get a jab in your arm. You know what I mean? Try and save lives. But it's just the American way of, I've got my rights, I've got my this and that. And unfortunately, there's still a bit of fight back about it. But I mean, a third of the population being vaccinated already since Christmas is a huge start.
So just say hypothetically everyone gets vaccinated, does the world go back to normal, or are there still going to be restrictions on people, or have they not really worked that out yet?
I guess the world has to, so with viruses and pandemics in the past, they get to a point where they call it herd immunity. So I believe that is around 75% of the population has either had a virus or is immune to the virus through a vaccine or previously had it. So when your population runs at around 75% herd immunity, I believe they can say we can crack back on with life as we know it. But I know flying internationally recently, when we moved back over here to Seattle, Qantas aren't flying internationally at all. And if they are, to start back up in 2022, I believe, they're not going to let a foreign person on a plane or an Australian overseas unless you've got a vaccine. So I think, that's a pretty clear picture of where it's heading. I think the virus is, still be around for quite a while, and still, it's definitely not going to be in the rearview mirror in terms of the next 12 months, I wouldn't say.
But in my mind, even if getting the vaccine would knock 6 months off my life at the end of my life because they haven't tested it properly or whatever, if the world went back to normal, I'd fucking do it.
Well, that's it, mate. I mean, I sort of had this argument with a couple of fellows over here that sort of had some reasoning to not get it. And I just said in a broader picture, people are dying. Hundreds of, literally millions of Americans and hundreds of millions of people around the planet are dying still to this day. So it just makes sense to do your part to try and halt that, right? Or to try and put an end to that. In my mind, I mean, it's pretty simple. A free vaccine. It doesn't cost anything. It's not, I understand the long-term studies aren't available in terms of like side effects or, but mate, we've put some other pretty crazy stuff in our body over the years, so.
Well, yeah, that's
hey,
fair.
I think we'll be all right, mate. I don't know.
Mate, so I was trying to work out how to do this with you because I know you. So I was like, should I just do this as a conversation, or should I pretend like I don't know anything? But I think the best way is to just talk. How did you get into rugby to start with?
So rugby originally, how I got into it. So I grew up playing rugby league. I grew up in central Queensland in a small mining town called Emerald. It's about 3 hours west of Rockhampton, I guess would be the closest point where people would know. Rockhampton's quite a bigger sort of town in central Queensland. And, rugby league was basically everything there. Like that was life. So grew up playing rugby league and we're starting to get, decent, I guess. I was quite an overweight kid, as a lot of us big fellas are. And once I started to get a little fitter around 13, 14, I then moved to Coffs Harbour, and I was still playing rugby league for a team called Coffs Harbour Comets, which is a local rugby league team in Coffs, in Group 2 rugby league. And I was playing with them, but I started playing a bit of rugby through school just because I wanted to get out of school. You know what I mean? If there was a tens or a sevens tournament down in Port Macquarie and we're gone for the day, mate, I'm on that bus. You know.
So that was for Jetty High.
Yeah, Coffs Harbour High School, Jetty High, as we know it. Yeah, and yeah, mate. So I just started to put my hand up to try and play as much footy as you do when you're 14, 15, and I got seen by a parent. Is they good enough? Who you might know from Coffs Harbour. His dad, Pete Goodenough. He's a great local rugby sort of figure in Coffs Harbour and on the coast. And he said, look, mate, we've got a country championships in Grafton in a couple of weekends' time for, you know, under 15s or whatever it was. He's like, I know we're playing you in the centres and stuff like that in this tens, but I reckon you'd be a good front rower in rugby. Would you mind? He's like, I don't mind picking you up and driving you down, and I'll talk to your parents and take you to Grafton for the weekend. And I think you'd go quite well. I said, yeah, mate, no worries. I'll give it a crack. Hadn't played much rugby at all. And then we went down there and for the Mid-North Coast, and I think we came second in the country champs, and I got picked in the New South Wales country team. I actually played that tournament at 12 at inside centre, and got picked as a tight head prop, and that was that. From that point, I was 15, played in the New South Wales country sort of tournaments. You know, where you go and play City and Sydney, you go and play some other things. We also had a tour to the Cook Islands in New Zealand. And at that point, I had some other interest from rugby league, whether or not I was going to go to the Newcastle Knights. They wanted me to move to Newcastle to go to play Harold Matthews, which is under 16s NRL or whatever you call it. But I needed to move to Hunter Valley Grammar School, which is in, or Hunter Sports High School, sorry, which is in Newcastle. And as a 15-year-old, basically they got on the phone and said, you've got to choose what you're going to do now, rugby league or rugby union. And I had a tour coming up to New Zealand and Cook Islands, you know, and as a 15-year-old, you're not going to turn down an opportunity to travel overseas. So I said sayonara to rugby league, and went on to play for country on that tour, and never turned back, mate. Through under 15s through under 18s, I was I'd played country year in, year out, and got to travel, you know, to 8 or 9 countries by the time I was 20 through either country or country schools. And it's just such an amazing sort of opportunity that New South Wales country still does these tours today, because, you know, to pluck a young kid out of the country like myself and yourself, and to be able to see the world, it's just an amazing part of rugby. And doing that and falling in love with the game then, obviously, yeah, I'm so glad I made that decision. Yeah.
Did you play Australian schools at all?
No, so I played for country schools first 15 when I was in year 11. And then the next year I thought I wanted to play Aussie schools. My best pathway to do that was to go and try out for CHS, which is, you know, New South Wales Combined High School. So the second year I trialled for CHS and made the first 15 for New South Wales, and then made the New South Wales All Schools team, which then goes to the Australian Championships. And in that tournament, I busted something in my shoulder, a rotator cuff, something or other, and missed out on the Australian champs. So never got that chance to play Aussie schools, which was a bit of a bummer. And especially being from the country like us, you're quite isolated. You think if you want to get seen or you want to get picked up, Australian schoolboys is probably, you know, your pathway to do so, you know. So I missed out on that, sorry. And when I did then, I recovered from that shoulder injury. I just decided to have a gap year. I wasn't even 18 in high school. I was a year young. So I thought I'm going to stay at home for a year, and I'm just going to play some rugby. I still had the New South Wales country under 18s, you know, season. We're going on a tour to Hong Kong, which you're aware of. That's actually where I first met you, in Hong Kong there. But I was playing for Coffs Harbour in the grand final. There was 2 Coffs Harbour teams, and we were playing each other in the grand final. This was 2009. And a man by the name of Darren Coleman was stopping by in Coffs Harbour on the way through to his home, which is in Southwest Rocks. He stopped in to watch the grand final, and he gave me a call the next day and said, mate, I stopped by on the way through, was grabbing lunch and watched the grand final. I'd like you to come down to Canberra and trial for this Brumbies Academy. I said, mate, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm the head coach of the Brumbies Academy. We've got a program. It's next week. There's about 100 kids coming down, and there's about 3 or 4 spots. He's like, if you can, we can arrange for your travel down to Canberra, and we want to see if you'd like to mix it in this trial. And I said, oh, of course, mate. So my old man got in the car as we did and drove the 10 hours down to Canberra or from Coffs or whatever it is. And it was a 3-day sort of process. Did some skills and some units the first day, a bit more of rugby-related games and skills on the second day. And on the Sunday, we played a couple of games of 10s. And at the end of it, there was 100 sort of teenagers sitting there, and they read 3 names out to get an academy contract. And I was very, very fortunate enough to be one of those names. And that's how I basically...
I didn't know that. That's so random.
Yeah, and that's basically how I started to get into some sort of system, was from Darren sort of telling me at a young age, by chance, by absolute.
That's what I think.
Chance.
Sliding doors type moment.
Yeah, right place, right time. Good old Coffs Rugby Club, and went down there
hasn't changed at all.
Hasn't changed. Yeah, you were there the other weekend, eh? Yeah,
not at all.
No, I'd imagine Coffs, the time in Coffs was still just ticking along just as it was. But yeah, mate. So I went down there and had a crack and got to start with them. And then from there, those 2 years I spent in the Brumbies Academy, was able to then get selected in the Australian under-20s. And then go on to play in the Junior World Cup in 2011, which was in Italy. And from there, I knew I was kind of cemented somewhat in a pathway in Australian rugby, which was always the tough part, like I said, from being isolated, trying to get seen or get noticed or put your best foot forward for a higher honours or a selection process. So yeah, mate, that's how I got how it started.
How did you end up at Randwick?
So a man, it's a very, very small world. A man named Keith Holmes, who is the Colts director now at Southern Districts, our beloved club. He was the Colts director at Randwick. And when I made those New South Wales schoolboys teams, Keith had flown my dad and I down to Coogee, stayed in a lovely hotel, and we went and met with Randwick, and I'd chosen that would be my club to play Colts at. My dad grew up around the eastern suburbs, around Coogee as well. He used to knock around the Coogee Bay Hotel a little bit when he was a bit younger, I think, the big fella. So he had plenty of good stories about Coogee and, the famous galloping greens of the 70s, 80s, and me growing up watching Randwick play on ABC against Sydney Uni, when I was a kid going, geez, how good this. I wanted to wear the myrtle green for sure. So I took that up. The Brumbies Academy allowed me to go and play Colts at Randwick the first year. And then the second year at the Brumbies Academy, they brought in a rule that we had to play in Canberra to try and strengthen the Canberra comp, which again is still in place, I believe. And Brisbane were then doing that. The Reds were doing that. The Brumbies were doing that. And now Sydney's obviously doing that with the Waratahs. But in those days when we were playing, when you and I were playing at South back in the day, there wasn't that law where, you have to stay, your super players play in your town. You remember those final series when Super Rugby would finish and all the Wallabies would come back to shoot Shield. That was a hell of a competition. And So yeah, mate. So I had to stay in Canberra 1 year and play with Gungahlin down there. Played Aussie 20s that year, and then I didn't get a contract with the Brumbies. There was another promising young upcoming loose head prop by the name of Scott Seo, who was in front of me. We both played Aussie 20s together, and he picked up the contract in Canberra. So that left me without a deal, and I said, well, next thing you've got to do is try and crack the shoot Shield. So I moved back to Randwick. I'd played Colts there previously. I went back to Randwick, and all of a sudden I'm in a preseason and I'm training with third and fourth grade, and it was kind of a weird thing. I've just come off the back of a Junior World Cup. I'm fit, young, healthy. I at least wanted to press my case to be somewhat selected in first or second grade for a trial match. Try and prove myself. But again, I was just training in the preseason, probably 4 or 5 weeks, just mellowing with the third grade team or something like that. And I just wanted a chance, an opportunity. And a man by the name of Cam Blades, who we know quite well, was the head coach of Southern Districts at that point. He saw me in a trial game playing for third grade for Randwick and said, mate, what's going on here? And I said, look, mate, I don't know. They've just sort of said, you're a young boy, you need to earn your stripes. So this is how we do it at Randwick, and I felt pretty bitter about that I'd played Colts at the club, and I'd felt I'd earned my stripes somewhat. And he said, mate, look, it was the week before round one at Shute Shield in 2012 that year. He said, look, mate, come to South. If you like, I can't guarantee you a first grade spot, but I can guarantee you a chance to prove yourself on the stage. And that's when I reached out to yourself. I knew you were there. I knew you were from Coffs Harbour. We'd met briefly, and you had nothing but glowing reviews about South and the club. And next week, mate, I was there at South. Luckily, you and a few other blokes were there. And I round one against Manly, I started in second grade, came off the bench in first grade in that first week. And then from there on, I played 55 straight games in first grade for South and changed my career, mate. Absolutely.
So you came down the week before the first game of that year?
That's right, yeah.
Fuck, I didn't realise it was that. I didn't realise it was that close to the season. That was the year we made the grand final versus
grand final against Uni. Yeah, we're at Concord. We lost by a point on the bell. Yeah,
that was a spectacular rugby team. That's
what I'm saying. I was saying before about the sort of the cattle that were coming back from after Super Rugby. You know, you're talking Kane Douglas and Sidaleki Tamani, Lepeti Tamani, Tetra Faulkner. I believe myself, I think you and me were the only players that weren't Super Rugby contracted at that point in the team. And Sean Doyle, but obviously he went on to play at the Brumbies and Ulster. Just an amazing experience. You know, Nick Cummins, Rob Horn, you know, that kind of upper echelon of players coming back to play in a Shute Shield final series. It was unreal. And, you know, 2012, what was I, 22 years old or something like that, you know, amazing. But yeah, mate, that's how I got to South, and it was a bit of a strange sort of story, a strange sort of runaround to get there. But then, as you know, the club and the culture at that place, it just sucks you right in. It's you know, maybe to the detriment of some of the performances over the years, but just a great family culture. You know, people would bleed for that jersey and have and do, you know. And, you know, just even going back this last year during COVID when Major League got cancelled, you know, back to Sydney and hadn't pulled the jersey on for quite a while, you know, since 2017 or something. And within 24 hours, mate, I had a job. I had a apartment that was rented, and I was back playing footy. You know, they just genuinely care about people and making sure that you're as happy and as comfortable as you can be to make sure that your rugby can be as successful as it can be, you know. So, and that's what club footy is about, and especially at Shute Shield level.
Mate, I think we're pretty lucky at South. I know guys from a lot of other clubs, and there's some good culture there, but you know, it is one of those places that keeps sucking you back in, as you say.
Yeah, it's a dark hole, isn't it?
I've got a theory that people that tend to stay for a long time tend to be a little left of centre, and if you don't enjoy like a beer and, you know, maybe a good time, you probably don't last there too long.
Yeah, it's also like, well, yeah, easy go. It's you know, as well, like a lot of other clubs can seem a bit cold. You know, South have their own venue, their own clubhouse. You know, a functioning bar upstairs. There's photos hanging on the walls of all the players, past and present. It's just a good old-fashioned rugby club feel, you know. And the ground is immaculate. There's new gym facilities that the club are putting in place. It's just on that borderline of being a professional setup now. And I was just saying last year with Todd Loudon coaching, it was, mate, it's better than some programs I've been in that are full-time, mate, in terms of the content, you know. So they're going in the right way. And I wish them all the best. I hope this will be a successful year for them.
How did you make the jump into professional rugby?
How did I make the jump into professional rugby? Not well. I played, like, you know, those three or so years at South, and then I got a phone call from Michael Checker. I was working at TradeLink at the time with yourself. A little bit bitter that I hadn't been sort of picked up at that point to maybe try and press my case into a Super Rugby team. We'd been very dominant as a club, and especially, you know, our niche area of scrummaging, we had one of the better packs in the league, and we'd be going quite well. I was starting to feel a bit bitter that not getting a chance.
You're being humble. We're fucking people up.
Yes, we were. So I was a little bit dirty, and then at the end of another Shoot Shield season where we just lost a semi to Eastwood, I believe, that year.
Yeah.
Sorry, we lost the grand final to Eastwood, and then I'm, back in a plumbing warehouse, wearing steel cap boots and just a little bit bitter about it, And I get a call from Checker saying, "Look, mate, we've got an opportunity. We're gonna bring 10 or so Shoot Shield players in to do the preseason with us. Would that be something you're willing to do?" And I said, "Oh, without a doubt, absolutely, mate." And I went and spoke to our boss that afternoon, and I left TradeLink that day, and I was at Waratahs training on the Monday. I spent every dollar, every cent I'd saved in my short life at that point on paying rent. My dad would help me cover rent and groceries for that 6 months. It was an ultimate sacrifice to try and crack it,
So you didn't get paid by the Tars for that pre-season?
Not a cent, no.
Okay.
And it was just myself and guys like Hugh Roach and Cameron Orr and a few other guys that were doing it. It was just after that year that the Australian Rugby brought in the wider training group contracts, because the Players Association sort of seen what had happened to sort of us, but mate, which we were more than willing to do at that point. And I mean, it was an opportunity, but from then on, if you were going to be training with the team full time, you were getting compensated from 2015 onwards. So I guess we were the last sort of old school train until you make it type of crew. But spent 6 months at the Tars under Checker, and that was the 2014 championship winning Waratahs team. I mean, the amount of experience, the amount of the knowledge in that group of players, and the leadership qualities from all those players, it was amazing to be a part of, and bloody hard, mate. Bloody hard. Like, I remember coming home from some sessions and physically just, or mentally not being able to talk, or that was that's the difference of the intensity and the intent of training at that level.
Was that the last of the real long pre-seasons?
It was. It's the ones that start in September. Yeah, the ones that sort of start in September, and the first game's not till February.
Yeah.
So you're slogging for 12 weeks before you're playing a trial game, and then I was lucky enough to play for the Waratahs A in those. They called it Pacific Nations Cup at that point. We had like a round robin between the Brumbies, the Reds, and Samoa, Tonga, Fiji. It was sort of a Pacific Nations Cup, and got to play in a couple of trial games for the Tars against the Brumbies and against the Highlanders. And again, pushing my case, but not really getting anything out of check. Whenever myself or my management would speak, "You're doing well, keep going. And then all of a sudden, mate, it's been 6 months, and the team Waratahs are heading off to Africa on their tour. And he pulls me and a couple of others aside and said, "All right, mate, you guys are doing quite well, but there's no space for you on this tour, and now you're going to go back to Shoot Shield. Thanks for your time." And I remember at that point just being dumbfounded. Like, I've given physically everything, emotionally everything, financially I'm busted, and then I'm in the car on the way home, and I just I'm just, what else do I have to do? Like, what, someone just give me a crack, and I was just broken, mate. And I remember calling my dad in the car on the way home, and I just put the phone on speaker, and I don't even think I could say a word for 10 minutes, driving from City Football Stadium back to Cronulla or something, coming through Brighton the Sands, and just sort of started to tear up to my old man, and just, sort of battling with how much I'd invested. Not only that 6 months, but the last sort of 5 years since leaving home, or 6 years, just sort of, that was my chance, and I've blown it, and, to my understanding, I thought I was going quite well, and the feedback from checking the other coaches was good, but there was, I guess it was budget or whatever it was no space for contractually. So here we are again, mate, and I'm crawling back to TradeLink, and I'm in steel cap boots again. And I'm just sort of, at this point, I've had enough. I thought if I don't, I'm going to play the year out with South, but it's not going to happen for me. I'm not good enough. And I probably just had to swallow that and get on with it. And I, back at Tradelink, and I swear, mate, I swear to God, a week later, I get a call from the Melbourne Rebels CEO, Baden Stevenson. So 2 weeks prior to that, I played for the Waratahs against the Rebels in a trial match in Albury. And I get yellow carded for being accidentally offside, but making a cover tackle for someone who'd missed a tackle. And I was only on the field for 12 minutes, and then got a card. And I thought, well, that's it, mate, I'm done, sort of thing. And anyway, I get a call from Baden 2 weeks later. He said, mate, we'd love to, we like what we've seen. We've been following you for a few years in Shoot Shield, and we'd love to bring you down to Melbourne. And that was it, mate. And that was literally a week and a half after I'd been sort of let go from the Tars. So again, the highs and lows and emotionally of, everything you go through in terms of the professional side of things. But that was 2015. That was 2014. We played out that Shoot Shield season, and I think we lost against Eastwood in the final.
Yeah.
And then that was the start of my journey to Melbourne. Yeah. And for the 2015 Super Rugby season.
So you got signed on an EPS contract?
Yep. First year was EPS contract. So I think each team was allowed 5 of them at that point, and it was me and Stephen Cummins, the lock from Eastwood, who's actually back at Melbourne now.
He started on the weekend, didn't he? Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And me and Cummo were also training together at the Waratahs for that 6 months, the same sort of on that, for free. So me and Cummo knew each other a lot. We'd battled a fair bit together. And then once we both got offered this EPS contract, we thought it was a no-brainer to try and, get an apartment down there or a townhouse or something and live together, trying to make the transition into Melbourne and the transition into Super Rugby a little bit easier because, you got someone you know. So, we moved down there and with our partners as well. I'd met my now wife, Brooke, I think only 3 or 4 months prior to moving to Melbourne. We kicked it off pretty well. So Brooks came down to Melbourne as well. And we moved into a spot there with Stephen, his partner at the time. Yeah.
When you got that call, so like, I remember that time. There was some good times and there was some shit times as well. How did you, what was your mood when you got a call from the Rebels? Can you remember how you felt?
Yeah, I felt a sense of relief, for sure. I was very bitter about the Waratahs, the way it ended. Not bitter about my time there. I became a professional rugby player at my time in that preseason under Checker and his coaching staff. No doubt about it. But I was bitter again at not getting a greater opportunity. So I can honestly say that the feeling was relief. But then again, nervous as well. Now's your shot to perform. You got to get down there and then you've got to prove yourself. And then, a lot of people know the next few years for myself, I almost got robbed of, my body has let me down basically and got robbed of being able to prove myself the way I would have liked to on that stage. The first year as an EPS, I debuted for Melbourne against the Waratahs at Stadium Australia. So back against the old team and then played another couple of games that year. And then that NRC really looking to try and to stake my claim, play well in NRC for Melbourne Rising. And, maybe then I'll push into the 23 for next year a bit more for Melbourne, really try and cement myself as a good up and coming tight head. And it was the first game playing for Melbourne Rising. We were at Gold Coast Uni and you were in the squad as well, living with me at the time. And right off the kickoff, I went to make a tackle on Radiki Samo, and my leg just got caught in an awkward way, and I tore my hamstring off my bone, all 3 tendons. This is 45 seconds into the game. From only playing 2 or 3 Super Rugby games at that point, and then having to go through that debacle of an injury, I just thought there's probably not another chance. After everything I've done to get here now, they're telling me I need to learn to walk again. They're telling me it's going to be a 12-month turnaround, and I was only on a 1-year contract. You know what I mean? Like, how is this going to, how does this play out in your head, and yeah, they told me 12 months. I've never worked as hard in my life. I played Super Rugby again in 6 months from that injury. But then again, that year, getting a few chances. I think I played 6 or 7 games that year coming back from the injury and got rushed straight out of rehab, straight into the team because there was an injury to Laurie Weeks, I think, or something. Just wasn't match fit, wasn't, and again, sort of existing, not in my old, not in my prime of being able to prove what I can do at that level, and yeah, so then that was 2016, a setback and back, but I'm kind of there. Got offered another 1-year contract at that point, so it's my 3rd year, and I'm finally fit and healthy. I'm mentally in a good spot, and I'm pushing hard in preseason. I'm training well, I'm strong, I'm fit, and I'm healthy. And I start to get a bit of a pain in my foot in the preseason. And I'm thinking maybe I'll just sort of get on with it. And I just keep going and going and going until I wake up one morning and I can't walk. And I think, oh gee, something's wrong here. So I go and get an MRI, and it turns out I've ruptured this joint in my foot and I need to get a foot reconstruction. We're 1 week out from a trial match in preseason, and I'd been, slugging away at it for that entire sort of 10 weeks, and I walk into the doctor's office and he says, mate, look, you have to make a choice. If you have the operation, the year's gone, and you're up for a contract renewal at the end of the year. You've got to perform, or your career's probably done here. I'm talking to the Rebel stock. I said, I understand that, mate. Like I know what's going on. And he said, well, how about we try and cortisone the joint, put a couple of needles in there, see what happens. And I said, mate, I'll do anything to play. Just sort of keep me on the field, mate. Keep me on the field. And then it was just a snowball, mate. One cortisone, another needle, this and that, and to the point where I couldn't even drive the car, and ultimately I had to have the operation. And that was the end of my Super Rugby career at Melbourne, mate. That was the 3rd year, 2 sort of long rehabs, and just not enough time or enough time in the saddle to prove what I had to offer or to show what I had to offer. And it was heartbreaking. But I walked into Baden's office. I just got out, finished my rehab with my foot. I said, mate, I want to release. Baden's like, what do you mean you want to release? I said, I need to go and play rugby, mate. I've been in rehab for sort of 2.5 years since I've been here. I've got to go and prove to myself that I can still play this bloody game. Like, if anything, to myself, not to you or anyone. And he says, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go and play. I want to go and play for South. And he said, mate, if you sign a release, that's it. We're done here at Melbourne, and that's that. I said, yeah, mate, pull out the paperwork. I just needed to get out, mate. I needed to play rugby. I needed to show myself that I could still do it. I said, I was sort of lacking some self-confidence myself going through all of that. And I signed it. Brooke was still working in Melbourne, so I went up and I surfed on your couch for a bit, and then I surfed on my brother's couch for a bit just to play Shoot Shield. And we got up there and we played a couple of good games, and we were in the semi-final against North. And 20 minutes in, I've made a tackle and dislocated my left shoulder. 3rd game back from a 6-month foot rehab, and needed a full reconstruction and biceps tendon reattachment. So at this point, mate, I'm done. I'm probably going to retire from rugby. I've given mentally everything I can give. Physically, I think my body's just, maybe I'm not cut out for the professional rugby. I don't know. I know I'm good enough, and I still believed that. I just couldn't get a break. So I said to Brooke, pack up our house in Melbourne, come up to Sydney. We're going to go on a holiday. We're going to get as far away from rugby and the people around rugby, and we're going to go and enjoy ourselves for a few months. So we applied for a working visa in Canada, and the visa came back, and Brooke and I jumped on a plane with a one-way ticket, and you know, I was 4 weeks out of a shoulder reconstruction, so still in a sling and everything. And we jumped on a plane and we landed in a little town called Nanaimo in British Columbia on Vancouver Island. It's just a sort of short ferry away from Vancouver mainland. And I had a mutual friend there, and that was my sort of connection. And we were sort of, he said, "Oh mate, there's a local rugby team here called the Nanaimo Hornets." He said, "Why don't you come down and help them out a little bit? I know you're in a shoulder sling and all that, but why don't you come and help them out? I'm sure the forwards could use a little bit of help." And I said, "Oh mate, I didn't come here for rugby. Look, I'll come down and give them a hand." And by 2 weeks, I was the head coach of this team, traveling all over British Columbia, coaching them, and it was unreal, mate. Helping these guys sort of play and learn and grow in a comp, and they'd just been promoted to the Premier Division of the British Columbia League, and they're sort of a struggling club. So yeah, to try and help them, and at the same time, I was absolutely hammering my shoulder rehab. I was, in my mind, I was still ticking a little bit, you know, and coaching this team had given me that little bit of a buzz back for rugby, you know, being around rugby and being around and helping coach a little bit. It started to sort of light that fire a little bit inside me, that maybe I've got some unfinished business, you know. So we'd been in this town for about 6 weeks at this point, and I see a bit of a buzz coming up of this MLR, this Major League Rugby, sort of starting in 2018. So I didn't tell Brooke, but I start punching a couple of emails away to a few teams, you know, and I'm trying to find what I can online, you know, the Seattle Seawolves. I'm like, what's the Seawolf? You know, I don't know what's going on. You know, the New York team, the blah, blah, blah. Geez, it'd be nice to live there. And I'm just punching a few emails away. And, you know, a couple got back to me, but said, you know, the rosters are full. There's not really much of a salary cap, you know, blah, blah, blah. And Seattle owner gets back to me and says, "Mate, there's no cap. There's no salary cap, not for a Super Rugby player, maybe next year, blah, blah, blah." And I go, "Oh, yeah, no worries." So I sort of let that go. And I was coaching my team against the University of British Columbia up in Vancouver. And their head coach was actually the director of rugby who was putting together the roster for the Seattle Seawolves. And he'd seen me coaching that day, and we had a beer in the clubhouse after. And he goes, "Man, look, I'm sorry we couldn't get you down there. We just didn't, you know, we're not going to fit you in the budget." And I just looked him in the eyes and I said, you haven't even asked me what I'd come for." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Mate, put me on a plane, put me in a house, and I'll figure it out. I just want to play footy again." And he goes, "Give me a minute." He walked outside the clubhouse, called the owner, and I was down there in a couple of weeks, mate. And, you know, he said, "I can't guarantee you match time. I can't guarantee you anything like that." And I said, "Mate, just get me down there and I'll sort it out." And then that was that. We moved in. I had to leave my wife in Canada. She didn't have a visa. They got me a visa, and I went down to Seattle and worked my ass off. You know, living in a rugby house with a few boys, probably 5 or 6 boys. So a bit of a different lifestyle, as you can imagine. But we went down there. That first year was eight games with final series. I think we won all 8, and we won the finals, the semi and the final, and it was amazing, mate. It changed my life forever. You know, being on the verge of quitting, literally giving the game away at the age of 27, to being given a second chance, you know, well and truly a second chance, another shot, for a packet of biscuits and a cup of tea when I got here, in terms of payment.
Literally.
I said, "Mate, give me enough." My words were, "Give me enough to pay my groceries and put me in a house, and I'll sort the rest out." And I did. And it's, forever grateful for that opportunity. You know, it made me fall in love with rugby again, you know, to compete, to be a part of something brand new, you know, the inaugural year of a new league in a new country. It was just exciting. It was fresh, and it was the fresh new start that I needed, you know. Yeah, crazy. The crazy sort of path to get there.
How do you look back on that time?
How do I look back on the time?
Yeah, from Melbourne to Waratahs. Like, how do you look back on it?
How do I look back on it? I think for a lot of years I was probably bitter. A lot of years I was probably angry about a lot of things. It's, you know, why me, you know, mate, right. A lot of stuff I could have controlled better as well. You know, it's probably not only till the last sort of few years that I've been smart about the way I treat my body on and off the field, you know, recovery wise, nutrition wise, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it all adds up. You know, of course I had some unlucky injuries, you know, tearing your hamstring off the bone and dislocating your shoulder, a freak accident. But, you know, like, you know, could I go back and change things and do things differently? Of course I could, but there's not a person on this planet, mate, that wouldn't tell you that. You know what I mean? And that's part of growing up. That's part of life, and that's part of growth as a human being, let alone a rugby player. And yeah, I now look back and say I was very, very fortunate to be a young boy from Coffs Harbour and play Super Rugby. You know, you know, and I'm forever grateful for that opportunity. And I'll always be rebel number 83, mate. You know, and no one can take that away from me. And that's pretty unreal for a kid from Coffs, like I said. So, you know, I was bitter over the years, but now I look back and I have enjoyed, you know, everywhere I've been and what I've done. Yeah.
How did the opportunity at counties come up?
So we'd won year one at Seattle and started to make some waves back home. You know, Metcher had been injured for years, blah, blah, blah. You know, there was a little bit of interest to come back home and maybe have another crack at Super Rugby. Have a little little silly sausage, as we call her. Made some interest to come back home and play Super or have another crack and get back in the big leagues, as they call it. We just won a championship. I'd committed to Seattle for a second year, and we were building something awesome here. And you know, I was part of the coaching staff at Seattle and part of, you know, growing things off the field as well. You know, in the commercial side of things and helping just try and grow the brand. And it's something that, you know, a bigger part of, a bigger cog in the engine, so to speak, than just being a number or a player as you would be in teams, you know. I really like that side of things, helping grow the game, community level as well as the professional level. And my agent reached out to me and said, look, mate, you started to create a couple of waves, you know, from playing MLR. He's like, there's a bunch of Mitre 10 teams that are looking for tight heads. Would you be willing, if it's suited, would you be willing to play Mitre 10 Cup? I said, mate, absolutely. I mean, growing up and watching rugby around the world, Mitre 10 is one of the most exciting brands of footy there is. And you would know, watching as much bloody rugby as you do, Mitre 10, I don't think there's another league like it. It's I think I don't know the stats per se, but the amount of time that the ball is in play in Mitre 10, I would imagine would be higher than Super Rugby.
It's definitely the most entertaining to watch. Definitely.
It's bloody, you know, and you know, I didn't know too much about Counties Monaco or the club itself. I knew it was just south of Auckland and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't until I got there that the club brings you in. But they don't just bring you into a team; they bring you into a rich history of rugby union in the area. Like it's unlike anything. You know, I think one of our first days, the new boys at the club, we had to walk into a dressing shed, and the rest of the team was singing to us basically a welcome song in Maori, in their native tongue, and basically welcoming you to the family. You know, you're not just if you're a Counties Monaco Steeler, you're part of a family, and that cultural aspect of the rugby that they lived and breathed for, you know, it was amazing. It was the experience. You're not just definitely not just a number on the sheet of paper. You know what I mean? It was a family sort of feel and vibe. And then, not to mention the rugby side of things, mate, it was awesome. You know, the way that Mitre 10 is run, it's professional, mate. It is, you know, you've got full staff, you're full time, the programs are awesome. And you know, the travel domestically it's run so smoothly. And sometimes, you know, they call it a hell week or something like that, where they have to play 3 games in as many as 10 days. I think just the way that the Mitre 10 works, so you might play a Thursday, and then play a Friday the following week, and then a Thursday the next week or something like that. So you know, we got those weeks. You might even come in and only train once that week or something because you're so busted, but then you're back on the plane. It was just an awesome experience, mate. And as you know, New Zealand's a lovely, lovely country. But I just love the rugby side of things, mate. Like coming from Australia, where I feel this is only my personal opinion, but Australia's so caught up on trying to not lose a game of rugby that they don't spend enough time on going, how are we going to win? How are we going to play expressively to win the bloody thing? Does that make sense? Like,
it does, yeah.
You know, the Kiwis, their mindset is a freedom to play expressively, a freedom to throw the ball around. Like, mate, you know, I'll never forget when Sonny Bill came and played a couple of games at counties before he was trying to, you know, stake his claim for the All Blacks World Cup squad. And one of the young Islander boys, he tried to throw a cutout pass to the winger or something, and the ball hit the ground. And he came in, there was a huddle straight after or something. He goes, boys, I'm so sorry about that. And Sonny looked at him and he said, don't you ever apologise, mate, for having a crack. Don't you ever apologise for having a crack. I want to see you do it again. And everyone just sort of looked at him and like, that's the difference. That like is the ultimate sort of difference between us and the All Blacks. Like they're praised for trying to play expressively. They're praised for showing off their skill set. And I believe we're almost coached to be robots and just scared of making mistakes. You know what I mean? I found that so refreshing. Like, you know, unbelievably refreshing to have a freedom to play rugby union. You know, it was unreal.
Do you think that's the difference?
I think it's got a huge part of it. Plus, also, it's the way that rugby union is run in New Zealand is like a well-oiled machine. I mean, when you've got the ultimate product, which is the All Blacks, and if you look at it as a holistic view, Super Rugby underneath runs very smoothly. Mitre 10 is probably one of the best domestic comps in the world. I think it's their shiny product, rugby union, and they're making sure it stays that way. And I think that's unreal, you know. And there's not a whole lot of competition for other sports. You know, I know we've got AFL and rugby league and cricket and all that, as they do. But that is well and truly their national sport. You know, it's you know, their one-way ticket.
Are you going back?
I did sign a 2-year deal. So last year I was supposed to go back with COVID, but the borders were closed. So unless I can get vaccinated over here, I can't get through the borders at the moment. So once I grab a vaccination here, we'll try and nut something out. I'd like to go for one more year. Yeah.
How many more years have you got in the major league?
Contractually or just in my mind?
Let's go contractually, then we'll go in your mind.
So after the first year, I had a 1-year visa. After we won and I had a successful year myself, I signed a 4-year contract with Major League Rugby. Then they were then able to apply for my visa for the duration of that contract. So, you know, I signed with the league until 2022, which will come up after next season. But in that contract, it was more just for the visa side of things. The way it works is that every year, my personal contract is negotiable for club and figure amount. So it's basically a way of being able to prolong the visa process for some foreigners they want to keep around. So every year we just sort of have a sit down and nut out what I want to get done and with the club, and that's how we sort of figure it out from here. I've got 1 year left on this current visa, which will be my 5th year next year over here. So yeah, we'll see. It's been a little bit tricky to navigate with a newborn, and you know, Brooke, my wife, she can't work in America. She can only live on the back of my visa. She can live in the country, but she can't work. So yeah, there's some benefits, and then there's some backlash as well from that. Brooke's been such a great support to me, but basically put her life on hold for a while, you know, especially in the early years. Probably a little bit easier now that we've got Ivy, our young daughter, because, you know, she's got her hands full, a little rascal, is here, and you know, we also have a lot of good family, and you know, I wouldn't say family, but close friends, and some of my teammates have got some young kids as well. So we have that sort of close knit family feel around in Seattle. So as hard as it is to take my family away from grandparents and things like that, we still have a pretty good support structure here in Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. How many more years do you think you have left of rugby?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Apart from, okay, so this way, you know, I was saying when I was at Melbourne and I had five operations in 4 years, you know, and, you know, from the first game I played for Seattle, I haven't missed a game until this season. You know, I think the year I played at Counties in 2019, I played 44 games of rugby, including Major League and Counties, and started every one. And just a complete reverse of what was the norm to me in terms of my career in Melbourne. But then going along again with how I have learned to look after myself better, things I need to do to stay on the pitch. I honestly feel pretty good, mate. I'll be honest with you, I feel good. I mean, I'm only turning 30 in May. So, look, touch wood. I don't know, mate. The only thing I would say is that I want my kids to go to school at home in Australia. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
But Ivy's only 5 months old, mate, so maybe I can shake a couple more years out. We'll see.
What are you going to do once you finish playing?
It's a good question. I've been thinking about it for a few years. Definitely Brooke and I want to open a business when we go home. I've always been a big fan, and we both have worked in the fitness industry. So something along those lines, and also food. As you would know, I'm pretty big on my food. I think people are always going to want to keep fit, and people are always going to try and fuel their body. So if I can try and incorporate both of those into a business model somehow in the future, I think that's where I want to go. But before getting to that point of being able to open my own or our own, you know, thing, maybe get into business at a franchise level and just get a bit more understanding about how to manage people, manage staff, manage a business before actually going on and doing my own thing, so to speak. You know, a franchise is a pretty foolproof plan on how to run a business, because there's a plan right in front of you. You know what I mean? And the franchisee or the franchisor, they're a call away if there's a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to sort of dip your toe in the water in terms of running a business crawl before you can walk, sort of, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I've tried to do a business course, but nothing sets you up for running a business like actually running a business.
Yeah.
So that seems like
I also started a business degree when I was at Melbourne, and I did a few subjects and just thought, this isn't going to help me I mean, it'll help me get a job, but I don't want to sit at a desk and work in marketing. You know what I mean? Like, that's not me. And a lot of people, like you've also just said, have also said, like, learn by just having a crack. So
it's the only one.
It's easier said than done, though, when you're investing a substantial amount of money into something. And but I mean, it is, like I said, with the franchise options, and there's a lot of support and a lot of research and a lot of history and those sort of things. So yeah, mate, that would be the plan.
Guzman Y Gomez.
Oh, you know it, mate. The food one, I really want to open a Zambero. I love Zambero.
Do they have them in the States?
They don't have them in the States, but they're strangely affordable in Australia. I mean, I think a Zambero franchise, I would say it's about 25% cheaper than a Guzman. And I would say that Zambero is probably 25% nicer than Guzman. So, you know, it's a win-win.
I'd agree with you. Yeah. Mate, thanks for this. I won't take you too much. I won't keep you too much longer.
Yeah, no worries.
What is your favourite touring place that you've ever been to?
Favourite touring place? Oh, you know, the standard ones, like I love South Africa and all that kind of stuff. But I have to say, mate, growing up watching movies as a little kid, there's no city in the world like New York. There is not. it is exactly what you think you see on the postcard and more. It is just a city with such rich history, and every block there's something new and different. We spent 10 days there on a holiday before I'd played rugby there, and I hadn't even seen 10% of Manhattan only, you know, on foot. You know, it was such an amazing city. I also am a big fan of Austin, Texas, and I would say if you can get to Austin, you can ask young Hugh Roach. I'm sure he's a big fan of Austin, Texas.
I've been getting regular updates.
It is a hell of a city. It's a hell of a city. Yeah, I also enjoyed Hong Kong. I know that you guys have spent a lot of time in Hong Kong as well, with your father, you know, being basically the president over there or whatever he is. I really enjoyed that city as well. But I would say I'm going to go with New York City. Yeah.
Oh, have you been back since COVID has been on?
No, I haven't. The league last year actually got cancelled on the Friday, and we were flying to New York on the Thursday, the day before. Right. So we basically just got grounded and told not to go to the airport. The league at that point was going to be suspended for 30 days while they try and figure out what this COVID is. And then it was pretty evident pretty quickly that it meant some business, and then they shut the league down. And Seattle was probably one of the first cities actually that had quite a big outbreak. A lady had traveled to Korea and contracted coronavirus, and then she'd come back and she worked at a nursing home, and it went right through the nursing home and it killed 60 elderly patients within like 7 days or something like that. And it's probably one of the first real outbreaks especially in America. So that was a bit scary because we were still here in town at that point. And when that sort of started to happen, we just jumped on a plane as soon as we could before Australia would shut their borders. Yeah.
Let's throw Rob James under the bus a bit. What's your favourite Rob James story that you can share?
There's none on this thing, mate. I'm surprised he isn't on a separate Zoom on the side here watching it. I don't know. The big fella, Rob James. Look, let's say some nice things about him first. There'd never be a bloke in the world that could care more than Rob James. And the old saying, "Give you the shirt off his back," mate. Tenfold, 10 times over. You know, just a little bit of a. He's just our pony, you know. I don't want to say, mate. Like, you know, can we make some better decisions in our life? Probably, you know, probably. You know, hey, I'm not here to throw any stones, mate. You know, I've made a couple of errors in my life, you know. But geez, big tone, something.
Mate, that's the nicest possible way of saying what you just said.
Yes. I won't. You can elaborate if you want, but.
No, I won't do that to him. Mate, let's finish. Thank you so much for this. This was awesome.
No worries, mate. I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat and tell my story. It's a bit of a weird one, and it's sort of gone up, down, and around and everywhere. But you know, if someone hears it when they're a bit down in the dumps or in an injury or something like that, and sees a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, then you know it's a story worth telling. So I appreciate the opportunity, and mate, and congrats on everything you're doing, and seeing the podcast is awesome, mate, and good on you for having a crack and putting yourself out there, because I know it's not always easy to wear your heart on your sleeve and be yourself, but mate, you do it so well, and it's been awesome to follow, mate. So keep it up,
mate. I appreciate it a lot. Yeah, well, when you agreed to do this, this couldn't have gone any better. But for me, some of the stuff you've overcome to get to where you are now, you really deserve what you've got. And I just wanted to get that across to people. And I think you've done a really good job of that.
Oh, I appreciate that, mate. Yeah. It's, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah. It's, some fruit at the end of the rainbow, or a pot of gold, or whatever it be. But, I was, like I said, when we were chatting earlier, just very fortunate enough to get a second chance. And not many people in sport do. So I'll be forever grateful to Seattle for that, and counties Monaco as well. And yeah, mate, we've turned a corner for sure.
Hey, will we see you back in the Southern Districts jersey one day?
The old question. I'm not going to say no, but I dare say we'll be in a lower grade.
Great way of saying it, mate.
Yeah.
I've jumped into coaching this year.
I've seen. Yeah, how are you traveling with that?
It's way more work than I thought. Way more work. More work. I'm enjoying it, but it's playing is a lot less stressful. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah. It's.
Are you enjoying
like,
it? You're enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot. It's for me. So I'm coaching twos now. So previously, I'd only ever watch scrums, lineouts, and then myself around the field. Or
exactly.
I'd follow props around the field in the game. And now I've gone from doing that to having to care about attack, having to care about defense, having to care about counter attack, kicking, stuff that is kind of logical, but I'd never really worried about it before.
Yeah, because there's other people taking care of those sort of areas, you know.
Yeah. Well, and
like, why does a tight end have to know about counter attack? I mean, give me a break.
You know, all I want to do is avoid them running it back so I don't get sidestepped.
Exactly right. Yeah, just get to the edge. Just get to the edge.
Well, that's right. So, and then it's a very weird mix because I played with a lot of the guys, and you know, some of them know some of the things that I've done, and they're like, that fucking guy's telling me about attack. You know, or that guy's going, oh, you probably shouldn't drink so much after a game. Not that I say that anyway, but it's a weird mix.
Yes. No, I bet.
You know?
But it's all. I found that as well, coaching scrum coach over here in Seattle, and it's very hard to coach people that you're putting your jersey on next to as well, or people that you have put the jersey on, because you're mates, and you'll always be mates, you know. So trying to find that fine line of mentor / teammate, it's always going to be tough. But mate, you've got a hell of a lot of knowledge up there from your time, so it's awesome that you can pass it on, and especially at the club that we both care so deeply about. So no, that's awesome, mate. I'm happy for you.
Thanks, buddy. Is coaching something that interests you once you're done playing?
Oh yeah, for sure. Not too sure in what area. I'd say there might be some opportunities over here, but yeah, I'll just sort of feel it out as my body again for the second time starts to let me down.
What have you done? You've got a hammy strain?
Oh no, I was only out I had tore my hemi in pre-season, so not too bad. I've finished my return to play this week, so I'll be back in for our third game.
Nice, mate.
Next week, this weekend against Utah. So ready to roll.
Mate, say hello to Summer for me.
I will do. We're button heads again.
Say hello to Rochi when you see him.
Will do.
And I appreciate it, mate. This is great. This is really, really good, mate. Say hello to Brooke and Ivy, and we'll talk soon.
Will do, buddy. All the best to Kate, mate, and we'll chat soon, buddy.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it a lot.
See you, Chubbs. No worries, mate.
See you, brother. Bye.